Hey, what's up? It's Ryan here, author of the book on digital marketing for plumbing and HVAC contractors, also the host of Blue Collar CEO, which if you haven't done yet, please listen to that show wherever you get your podcast. So that could be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, whatever, Stitcher. But yeah, I love hearing from contractors just like you who find it helpful. So yeah, please check us out. Coming at you video about the difference between logo and branding. I saw this comment the other day on someone's Facebook post where somebody said, well, a logo and brand are basically the same thing. And I thought, wow, there's a whole lot of wrong information in that little sentence. And maybe you probably feel similar. So let me kind of back up because the complexity of this and kind of the nuance of this might surprise you, but understanding the differences will help you make better choices. So if you go back in time, branding came from the idea of like owning cattle, right? So it came back like 16, 17, 1800s, where you literally have to brand livestock to know, hey, that's my livestock. I own that. That's property of mine. And it also designated a certain quality at some point, right? So, like, hey, that's my cow. That's my brand. That belongs to me. And it was about ownership of that thing. And that's still a sentiment that is true. Since that time, the United States Patent and Trademark Office has kind of evolved the idea of branding to include things that are protective for the customer, not just protective for the owner of the brand. So, for instance, Coca-Cola. A lot of you are probably familiar with Coca-Cola, the curly, swoopy sort of script. You've got the kind of cool hourglass bottle. That hourglass bottle shape is a trademark. It is a registered brand asset of Coca-Cola. And the reason that Coca-Cola does this is so that you, the customer, knows that that is a legit Coca-Cola product. Nobody else can put the Coca-Cola slogan on a straight shot-sided bottle. That's not a Coca-Cola. And so it's a way to protect you as the consumer to know that that's the quality and the company of the product that you're expecting to consume and purchase. So it really is kind of morphed into two different sort of categories. Category one is like protecting the person who owns the cattle. And the second is like protecting the customer so that they're not ripped off and deceived. And so the idea of like, how do we differentiate those is now we have a lot of components. One of the most visible components of a brand is going to be the logo. My friend Dan Antonelli is working on a book right now to talk about this exact thing. And it's one of these things where with the logo, it's going to instantly identify you to people, right? And it's usually going to be distinctive. It's going to try to set you apart. And you can think of logos. You probably know what these are. You can think of the Golden Arches. You can think of the KFC. You could think of Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks. But these are logos that help really identify who these companies are. They try to like represent the companies. Typically, the best logos like are going to be things that transcend sort of language barriers. So it doesn't matter sort of like what your linguistic background or what your ethnic background or what country you live. You can still see these same logos and understand what they mean. But then, so that's a logo, right? But a logo by itself is just a capsule. It's just a capsule of like communicating information. The idea of a brand is a little bit more abstract, and a brand can include aspects of a logo, but the idea of a brand is that it really has to do with like an emotional response. So for instance, if you think of going to McDonald's, you probably instantly have this feeling of what it's like to be inside of a McDonald's. Okay, good, bad, different. You probably have all these tactile sensations. What's the smell like? What does the floor feel like? What does the bathrooms feel like? What does the food taste like? Like all these sort of sensory things that come up without you stepping foot into a McDonald's. That's the brand. That is the actual brand of McDonald's. It's this response that it wells up in you when no words are spoken. You can think of another brand. Think of like Lexus or BMW, or think of Maserati, like these high-end brands that kind of elevate themselves. Instantly, you'll have this kind of feeling of what that would feel like, sound like, smell like. You have an idea of what the leather would feel like on the steering wheel. All these are really important elements in communicating a brand. Yes, they are coupled with a logo, and the logo over time will reinforce that brand. But the brand is going to be the emotional experience that your customer has before they call you, before you show up to their house, when they're talking about you online. Are they thinking positively of you? Are they thinking like you're a ripoff guy? Like everything you do is trash. Like the way that they think and feel about you before they talk to you at all, that's going to be things of your brand. Now, ideally, this brand is going to happen, by the way, regardless if you do anything about it. So if you work on branding, your customers are going to run with it, and they're going to create their own brand, and like it or not, whatever that the customer comes up with is going to stick. Companies who are really smart, they do a lot of work in cultivating the brand. They say, this is what we are, not this. This is what we are, not this. And over time, they reinforce this idea of what the brand can expect and what the brand can deliver, and what, when you engage with the brand, like what you can expect to happen with that. If there's any sort of break, that's when people get frustrated and pissed off. Like, that's not what BMW means. But the idea is saying a logo. So this is all just a complicated way to say a logo and a brand are different. They're related, right? But just because you have a logo made doesn't mean you're branded. And just because you focus on branding doesn't mean that you have a great logo. Ideally, you have both. They're kind of this synergistic coupling, because a good brand will help all of the other parts of your business run better. If you have a great brand, your marketing will work better, your hiring and recruiting will work better, your employee morale will be better. All those things tend to be better when you have a really great brand. If your brand is toxic, all the other stuff sucks. It's harder to hire, team morale is lower, marketing is just less efficient. So all those things kind of click in. The logo, again, it's just a symbol that kind of wraps all those things in, but it only works well if they're coupled, right? So think of like high-end watches, think of Rolex, think of Omega, think of things like that, where the brand, the logo, and then the brand experience go hand in hand. That's when you get these really powerful effects. If there's a break, now all of a sudden it's just, okay, this is the brand experience. I don't care what the logo is, right? Because that capsule, it's just delivering information that's bad. But I would love to hear from you. If you want to learn more about this, Dan Antonelli's book at Kick Charge, when it comes out, is totally worth a read. But yeah, I would love to hear from you. How do you think of logo? How do you think of branding? How do you think about them differently? What do you do to cultivate your brand internally, externally? I just love to hear from you. Leave a comment below. As always, guys, follow us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube. We'll see you next time.